I picked up my name tag at the wedding reception and stared at it in disbelief. The old wallet. I walked straight to my granddaughter Chloe and held it up. What happened next changed everything. "Chloe, honey, I think there's been a mistake with my name tag," I said, keeping my voice calm despite the heat rising in my cheeks. She barely glanced up from her phone. "What mistake, Grandma?" "It says the old wallet instead of Margaret Thompson. If you're watching this, subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Because trust me, you're going to want to see how this ends." Chloe rolled her eyes and let out this exaggerated sigh. "Grandma, stop being so dramatic. It's just a joke name tag. Everyone got funny ones." I looked around the ballroom. Jeremy's parents had Mr. and Mrs. Perfect. The bridesmaids had cute nicknames like Dancing Queen and Party Princess. "A joke?" I repeated. "Yeah, because you always pay for everything. It's not that deep, old hag." The words hit like a physical slap. Old hag. In front of half the wedding guests, who were now turning to stare. My own granddaughter, the girl I raised after her parents died in that car accident when she was 12, just called me an old hag. I stood there for a moment, feeling every eye in that fancy ballroom on me. 20 years of sacrifice, love, and financial support, and this is what I got in return. "I see," I said quietly, tucking the name tag into my purse. Chloe had already turned back to her phone, dismissing me like I was nothing, like I hadn't just paid $45,000 for this very wedding she was enjoying. You know what? Maybe it was time this old wallet learned how to stay closed. I smoothed down my dress, the one I'd bought specifically for her big day, and walked to my assigned table, table 12, in the back, behind the DJ equipment, because apparently that's where family ATMs belong. I sat at that back table, watching my granddaughter dance with her new husband Jeremy, and couldn't help but think about how different things used to be. You want to know how I ended up being called that name? Let me take you back 10 years. "Grandma Maggie, can you help me with my college applications?" 17-year-old Chloe had asked, sitting at my kitchen table with tears in her eyes. "The guidance counselor says I need to apply for financial aid, but I don't understand any of these forms." I'd pulled out my reading glasses and sat down next to her. "Don't you worry about financial aid, sweetheart. Grandma's got this covered." And I did have it covered. I paid for her entire college education at Northwestern, $68,000 a year for 4 years, not a loan in sight. When she graduated, I bought her that cute little apartment downtown so she wouldn't have to move back home. Then came the car, the designer clothes for job interviews, the down payment for the bigger apartment when she got promoted. "You're the best, Grandma," she used to say, hugging me tight. "I don't know what I'd do without you." Now, watching her laugh with her bridesmaids, I wondered when exactly that sweet girl had disappeared. When had "thank you" turned into "it's not that deep"? When had I stopped being Grandma Maggie and become the old wallet? The bride and groom's first dance ended, and Jeremy spun Chloe around. She looked absolutely stunning in that dress, the one I'd taken her shopping for at 3 different boutiques until we found the perfect one, the one that cost more than most people's cars. "Excuse me, are you Margaret Thompson?" I turned to find a young woman in a server's uniform standing beside my table. "Yes, that's me. The wedding planner asked me to give you this." She handed me an envelope with my name written in Chloe's handwriting. Inside was a bill, not just any bill, the final invoice for the entire wedding reception, $45,312, with a note attached. "Thanks for being such a sport about the name tag. XOXO, Chloe." I stared at that piece of paper for a full minute. She'd already assumed I would pay, didn't even ask, just handed me a bill like I was some kind of ATM machine. Well, wasn't that interesting? The next morning, I sat in my kitchen with my coffee and that wedding bill spread out in front of me. Line by line, I went through every expense. Premium open bar, $8,000. Upgraded floral arrangements, $6,000. The videographer, Chloe, absolutely had to have $4,000. My phone buzzed with a text from Chloe. "Thanks again for last night, Grandma. Jeremy and I are heading to Bali for our honeymoon. Love you." No mention of the bill. No, "would you mind?" or "could you please?" Just pure assumption that good old Grandma Maggie would handle it. I picked up my landline and dialed my bank. "Hi, this is Margaret Thompson." I need to review all the automatic payments coming out of my account that are connected to my granddaughter Chloe Stevens. Yes, Stevens is her married name now. 20 minutes later, I had a list that made my coffee go cold. Monthly rent on her apartment, $3,000. Car payment, $800. Insurance, $400. Credit card that I'd co-signed for emergencies. Minimum payment of $500, but she typically charged about $2,000 a month. $6,700 every single month for the past 3 years. "Ma'am, would you like to make any changes to these automatic payments?" the bank representative asked. "Not yet," I said, "but I might be calling back soon." I hung up and poured myself another cup of coffee. Then I did something I probably should have done years ago. I walked to my home office and pulled out every financial record I had. College tuition, $272,000. The apartment down payment, $60,000. Her car, $35,000. Wedding, $45,000 and counting. Monthly support for 3 years, $240,000. $652,000. That's what my unconditional love had cost me so far. Actually, let me be more precise. I pulled out my calculator and did the math properly. If Chloe paid me back $2,700 a month for 20 years, that would be $540,000. Close enough to cover the major expenses, though I'd still be out over $100,000. But honestly, the lesson was worth more than the money. And what did I have to show for it? A name tag calling me something I won't repeat, and a granddaughter who called me an old hag in front of her wedding guests. I sat back in my chair and laughed. Actually laughed out loud. Because you know what? She was right about one thing. I was a personal ATM, a walking, talking bank machine who said yes to everything and asked for nothing in return. But here's the thing about banks. They can freeze accounts. And mine was about to go into complete lockdown. What I discovered next would change everything between us forever. Later that afternoon, I decided to drive over to Chloe's apartment to water her plants while she was on her honeymoon. At least, that's what I told myself I was doing. Really, I was just feeling nostalgic and wanted to be in her space for a bit. I used my key, the one she'd given me, for emergencies, and stepped into that beautiful downtown loft, the one with floor-to-ceiling windows and exposed brick walls that she'd fallen in love with at first sight. "Grandma, this place is perfect," she'd said when we'd toured it 3 years ago. "I can totally see myself here." "It's a bit expensive, honey," I'd replied, looking at the rent amount on the listing. "But it's an investment in my future. And besides, you always said I deserve the best." I had said that. Many times. Because after losing her parents so young, I wanted to give her everything they couldn't. I watered her orchids and was about to leave when I heard a phone buzzing from the bedroom. I found Jeremy's phone on the nightstand. He must have grabbed Chloe's by mistake in their rush to the airport. The screen kept lighting up with new messages, and after the third urgent buzz, I couldn't help but glance at it. Working at the bank for 30 years taught me to notice financial red flags, and the preview text made my blood run cold. "Dude, when are you going to tell your wife about the gambling debt?" "Mike." I stared at that phone like it might bite me. "Gambling debt? What gambling debt?" Another message popped up. "That loan shark isn't going to wait forever, man. You said marrying rich would fix this." My hands started shaking. I set down the watering can and really looked at that phone. I shouldn't read Jeremy's messages. I knew that. It was wrong and invasive and... Another text. "How much does the old lady have anyway? Enough to cover $200K? $200,000 in gambling debt." I sat down hard on Chloe's expensive leather couch, the one I'd bought her as a housewarming gift. This wasn't just about Jeremy needing money. This was about him seeing me as a solution to his problems. This was about him seeing my granddaughter as a lottery ticket. But what did Chloe know? Was she part of this? Or was she just as much a victim as I was? My phone rang, making me jump. It was Sandra, my longtime friend and neighbor. "Margaret, how was the wedding? I've been dying to hear all about it." "Oh, Sandra," I said, and found myself telling her everything. The name tag, the bill, and now Jeremy's messages. "Honey," she said after a long pause, "you need to protect yourself, and you need to find out if Chloe knows about this debt." She was right. But how do you investigate your own granddaughter without destroying what's left of your relationship? I looked at Jeremy's phone again. He had dozens of recent messages, and most of them seemed to be from numbers, not saved contacts. This was bigger than I thought, and what I was about to discover would make everything else look like child's play. The next few days were the longest of my life. I kept thinking about those text messages, about Jeremy's gambling debt, about whether my sweet granddaughter had any idea what kind of man she'd just married. On Thursday, Chloe called me from Bali. "Grandma, you should see this resort. It's absolutely gorgeous." Jeremy surprised me with the honeymoon suite upgrade. "That's wonderful, dear. How are you affording all these upgrades?" I asked carefully. "Oh, Jeremy's been saving up. He's so good with money, Grandma. You'd really like that about him." Good with money. Right. 200,000 in gambling debt was definitely good with money. "Chloe, honey, can I ask you something? Has Jeremy ever mentioned any financial troubles? Any debts or problems?" There was a pause. "What do you mean? Why would you ask that?" "I just want to make sure you're taken care of, sweetheart. Marriage can be complicated when it comes to finances. Grandma, we're fine. Jeremy has everything under control. In fact," she lowered her voice, "he's been talking about starting a business when we get back. Something about investing in real estate. He just needs some startup capital." My stomach dropped. Startup capital, of course. "How much startup capital?" I asked. "He hasn't said exactly, but probably around 200,000, which sounds like a lot. But you always taught me to think big, right? $200,000, the exact amount of his gambling debt. Chloe, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Don't make any big financial decisions until we can sit down and talk. Okay? Promise me." Okay, you worry too much. We'll talk when I get back. I love you, Grandma." After she hung up, I sat there staring at my phone. My granddaughter had no idea. She thought she'd married a responsible, financially stable man who was planning their future together. She had no clue that her new husband was planning to use her and me to pay off loan sharks. That evening, I called my attorney, Patricia Wells. I'd known Pat for 30 years, and if anyone could help me figure out what to do, it was her. "Margaret, this is a delicate situation," she said after I explained everything. "But I think we need to take some precautionary measures." "What kind of measures?" "Well, first, we should review your will and any financial accounts that Chloe has access to. Second, we need to document everything you've discovered. And third," she paused, "third, you need to decide how much you're willing to lose before you draw the line." How much was I willing to lose? I'd already given Chloe everything I could. But apparently, it wasn't enough. It would never be enough, because now there was Jeremy and his gambling problem and their startup capital needs. "Pat," I said slowly, "what would happen if I removed Chloe from my will? Are you sure you want to do that?" I thought about that name tag, about being called an old hag, about finding out my new grandson-in-law saw me as a solution to his gambling debts. "Yes," I said, "I'm sure." While Chloe and Jeremy were still in Bali, I decided to do something I'd never done before. I investigated my own family's finances, not just what I was spending on them, but what they were doing with the money I'd already given them. I started with Chloe's credit cards, the ones I'd co-signed for and been paying off for 3 years. "I just need to see the statements," I told the customer service representative. "I'm the co-signer." What I found made me sick to my stomach. Designer handbags, expensive dinners, weekend trips, spa treatments. But more concerning were the cash advances. Lots of them. Always in round numbers, 500, 1,000, 2,000. Cash advances that started about 6 months ago, right around the time Chloe started dating Jeremy seriously. Then I called the leasing office of her apartment building. "Hi, this is Margaret Thompson. I'm the guarantor on Chloe Stevens' lease. Has the rent been paid on time each month?" "Oh, Ms. Thompson. Actually, we've been meaning to contact you. The tenant has been requesting to add her husband Jeremy Stevens to the lease, but there are some concerns about his credit score." "What kind of concerns?" "Well, he has several outstanding debts and his score is quite low. We'd need additional financial guarantee if he's going to be added." More debt. It wasn't just the gambling debt I'd seen on his phone. Jeremy was financially toxic, and now he was married to my granddaughter. My last stop was Jeremy's social media. I knew it was probably wrong to snoop, but I needed to understand what kind of person Chloe had married. His Instagram was full of pictures from expensive restaurants, sporting events, and vacations, all within the last 6 months, all while he apparently owed $200,000 to loan sharks. But it was his Facebook that really got to me. In a post from 2 weeks before the wedding, he'd written, "Can't wait to marry my beautiful Chloe. Time to start living the good life." The casino and money emojis. He wasn't even trying to hide it. I screenshot everything. Every cash advance, every concerning social media post, every piece of evidence that showed what my granddaughter had gotten herself into. Then I sat in my kitchen and made a list of every automatic payment, every bill, every financial obligation I was covering for Chloe and Jeremy. The monthly total was staggering. $6,700, plus the wedding bill, plus whatever startup capital they were planning to ask for. I picked up my phone and called the bank. I'd like to put a hold on all automatic payments to account holder Chloe Stevens, effective at the end of this billing cycle. Are you sure? Ms. Thompson? Some of these have been in place for several years. I'm sure. I need 2 weeks to review our family financial arrangements. This will include her rent, car payment, insurance, and credit card payments. They'll stop processing in approximately 10 days. Perfect timing. After I hung up, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Relief. For the first time since Chloe turned 18, I wasn't financially responsible for someone else's choices. Now, I just had to wait for them to come home and discover that the old wallet had finally learned how to stay closed. Chloe and Jeremy returned from Bali on a Tuesday. I knew because she posted 17 photos on Instagram of their amazing honeymoon, all from that expensive resort upgrade that Jeremy had saved up for. I'd calculated the timing perfectly. My bank hold would stop all automatic payments on Friday, which meant they'd have exactly 3 days to figure out their new reality. By Thursday morning, my phone was ringing. "Grandma, there's been some kind of mistake with my rent payment. The bank says the automatic transfer was canceled." I took a sip of my coffee. "No mistake, dear. I canceled it." Silence. Then, "You canceled it? Why would you do that?" "Because I think it's time for you and Jeremy to handle your own finances. You're married now, after all." "But Grandma, you've always what? Always paid for everything while you called me the old wallet?" Another pause. "Grandma, I told you, that was just a joke." "Was it? Because Jeremy seems to think I'm a solution to some pretty serious financial problems." I could hear her breathing change. "What are you talking about?" $200,000 in gambling debt, Chloe. Does that ring any bells?" What? That's impossible. Jeremy doesn't gamble." "Sweetheart, sit down. We need to talk." I told her everything. The messages on Jeremy's phone, the credit report from the apartment complex, the cash advances on her credit cards. I watched her world crumble through the phone. No, this can't be right. Jeremy wouldn't lie to me about something like this. "Honey, I have screenshots. I have documentation. Your husband has been using the money I give you to pay off gambling debts, and now he wants me to fund his fake business to cover the rest." She started crying. "Grandma, if this is true, what am I supposed to do? We just got married. I can't afford the apartment without your help. I can't afford anything without your help." And there it was, the truth we'd both been avoiding for years. Chloe had become so dependent on my financial support that she couldn't function without it. She'd never learned to budget, to save, to make financial decisions based on what she could actually afford. "You're going to learn," I said gently, "because I love you too much to keep enabling this." "Enabling what?" "Chloe, you're 27 years old. You have a good job, a college education, and a brain in your head. But you've never had to use any of those things to actually support yourself because Grandma's always been there with her wallet open. So you're just cutting me off? Completely? I'm teaching you to stand on your own 2 feet. Something I should have done years ago." She hung up on me. An hour later, Jeremy called. His voice was tight, controlled, but I could hear the panic underneath. "Mrs. Thompson, Chloe is very upset. I think there's been some misunderstanding about my financial situation." "No misunderstanding, Jeremy. I know about the gambling debt. I know about the loan sharks. And I know that you married my granddaughter thinking I'd solve your problems. That's not... Look, I care about Chloe. I love her. Then prove it. Get a second job, sell your car, do whatever it takes to pay your own debts. But you won't be doing it with my money. Mrs. Thompson, you don't understand. And you don't. These people I owe, they're not patient. If I don't pay soon, then you better figure something out, fast, because this family bank is permanently closed. I hung up and immediately called Patricia. Pat, I need to move quickly on changing my will, and I think I need to prepare for things to get ugly. What I didn't expect was just how ugly they were about to get. Things got ugly fast. By Friday, Jeremy was calling me every few hours. The calls started polite. Well, Jeremy's version of polite, but got increasingly desperate as the day went on. Mrs. Thompson, please, just a temporary loan. I'll pay you back with interest. Mrs. Thompson, Chloe doesn't deserve to suffer for my mistakes. Mrs. Thompson, you have to understand, these people will hurt me if I don't pay. That last call made me contact Patricia immediately. Pat, Jeremy just implied he might be in physical danger. What am I legally obligated to do here? Nothing, Margaret. His debt problems are not your responsibility, regardless of who he owes money to. But maybe you should consider talking to the police if he's being threatened. I'm not calling the police for Jeremy, but what if he tries to pressure Chloe into pressuring me? Then we document everything and prepare accordingly. Patricia was right to be cautious. Saturday morning, Chloe showed up at my door. She looked terrible, red eyes, unwashed hair, clothes that she'd clearly slept in. Grandma, please, Jeremy told me everything. About the gambling, about the money he owes. But he's getting help. He's going to Gamblers Anonymous and everything. I let her in and made her some coffee. Sweetheart, addiction recovery takes time. Years sometimes. How much are you planning to sacrifice while he figures his life out? He's my husband. I took vows. And what about the vows he took? The ones about being honest and faithful and providing for his family? She broke down crying. I don't know what to do. Grandma, I can't afford the apartment. I can't afford the car payments. I can't afford anything. And Jeremy says if we don't come up with money soon, something bad might happen to him. I sat down next to her and took her hands. Chloe, listen to me. You have choices. You can get a cheaper apartment. You can sell the car and get something more affordable. You can learn to live within your means. But I shouldn't have to. You have plenty of money. And there it was again. That entitlement that had been growing for years. I do have money, I said calmly. Money that I worked for, saved for, and planned to leave to my family someday. But I won't give it to someone who sees me as an ATM machine. That's not fair. What's not fair, Chloe, is being called the old wallet at your wedding. What's not fair is being handed a $45,000 bill without being asked. What's not fair is finding out that my new grandson-in-law married you to solve his gambling problems. She stared at me like I'd slapped her. You're really not going to help us. I'm helping you right now. I'm teaching you that you don't need my money to survive. You're smart, you're capable, and you're stronger than you think. And Jeremy? Jeremy made his choices. Now he gets to live with the consequences. She left without another word. But not before I noticed her looking around my house, calculating, estimating, like she was taking inventory. That's when I knew I had to take one more precaution. Sunday morning, I called my bank and requested that they flag my account for any unusual activity. Then I called Patricia to discuss additional legal protections. Because apparently, I no longer trusted my own granddaughter. Monday morning brought the call I'd been dreading. Grandma, it's me. Chloe's voice was shaky, but there was something else underneath it. Something harder. Jeremy's gone. Gone where? I don't know. He left a note saying he had to handle some business and that he'd be back. But Grandma, there are men calling our apartment. Scary men. They're asking about money Jeremy owes them. My blood went cold. Chloe, you need to get out of that apartment right now. I can't. I don't have anywhere to go. I can't afford a hotel. I can't afford... You can come here. Really? The relief in her voice was heartbreaking. Of course. You're my granddaughter. Pack a bag and come over right now. She arrived an hour later with 2 suitcases and tears streaming down her face. Grandma, I'm so sorry. About the name tag. About calling you. What I called you. I didn't know about Jeremy's problems, I swear. I believed her. Mostly. But I'd learned not to trust completely anymore. We'll figure this out, I told her, making up the guest room. But Chloe, there have to be some ground rules. Anything. You find your own apartment, something you can afford on your own salary. You get rid of that expensive car and buy something reasonable. And you learn to live within your means. Okay? And you file for divorce. She looked up sharply. Grandma, sweetheart, Jeremy abandoned you the minute his problems got real. He didn't try to protect you from those men. He didn't try to solve this together. He just ran. But what if he comes back? Then he comes back to a wife who's learned she doesn't need him to survive. Over the next few days, I watched Chloe slowly come back to life. She found a small one-bedroom apartment across town for $800 a month. She traded in her luxury car for a reliable used Honda. She even started cooking dinner for us instead of ordering takeout. I forgot how much I like cooking, she said Wednesday night, serving me homemade lasagna. I haven't done this since college. You're good at it. Yeah, well, I had a good teacher. She smiled at me, the first real smile I'd seen from her in years. Remember when you taught me to make your apple pie recipe? You were 12 and convinced you could do it better than me. I definitely could not. We laughed together. And for a moment, it felt like old times. Before Jeremy, before the entitlement, before she saw me as the old wallet instead of Grandma Maggie, that's when she said something that changed everything. Grandma, I need to tell you something. About the wedding, about that name tag. I set down my fork. What about it? It wasn't just a joke. Jeremy, he told me to do it. He said it would be funny, that you'd laugh about it. But really, he wanted to test how much you'd put up with. Test me? He said if you didn't complain about being called the old wallet, then you'd probably pay for anything. He was using me to manipulate you. I stared at her, and you went along with it. I didn't understand what he was really doing. I thought it was just wedding humor. But looking back, she started crying again. Grandma, I've been such an awful granddaughter. I let him turn me into someone I don't even recognize. I reached across the table and took her hand. The important thing is that you recognize it now. I want to make it right. I want to pay you back for everything. Chloe, no, let me finish. I've been calculating what I owe you. The college tuition, the apartment deposits, the car, the wedding, 3 years of monthly support. It's over $600,000. I blinked. She'd actually calculated it. I can't pay you back all at once, but I can set up a payment plan, even if it takes me 20 years. Sweetheart, I don't need... Yes, you do. And I need to do this. I need to prove to myself that I can stand on my own and take responsibility for my choices. That night, after Chloe went to bed, I called Patricia. She wants to pay me back, I told her. All of it? All of it. Over 20 years. But still, what are you going to do? I thought about the young woman upstairs who was learning to budget and cook and be responsible for the first time in her adult life, who had finally recognized what she'd become and was trying to change. I'm going to let her try, I said. But Patricia, I'm not changing my will back just yet. Let's see how this goes. 3 weeks after Chloe moved in with me, Jeremy finally resurfaced. Not in person, he was apparently too much of a coward for that, but through a lawyer. Mrs. Thompson, I represent Jeremy Stevens, the man said when he called Thursday morning. My client is requesting that you provide financial assistance to resolve some urgent debts. I laughed, actually laughed out loud. Your client can request whatever he wants. The answer is no. Mrs. Thompson, my client's safety may be at risk if these debts aren't resolved quickly. Then your client should have thought about that before he started gambling money he didn't have. There could be legal implications if harm comes to Mr. Stevens due to your refusal to help. Are you threatening me? Sir, I'm simply informing you of potential consequences. I hung up and immediately called Patricia. Pat, Jeremy's lawyer just tried to threaten me. What kind of threat? Implied that I'd be legally responsible if something happens to Jeremy because I won't pay his gambling debts. That's ridiculous and potentially unethical. Do you have the lawyer's name? I gave her the information, and Patricia promised to handle it. But an hour later, my doorbell rang. It was Jeremy. He looked terrible, unshaven, thin, clothes that hadn't been washed in days. But his eyes were what scared me. Desperate, dangerous. Mrs. Thompson, we need to talk. No, we don't. You need to leave my property. Please, just 5 minutes. I can explain everything. Against my better judgment, I opened the door but didn't invite him in. You have 5 minutes. Look, I know I made mistakes, big mistakes, but I love Chloe and I want to make this right. By demanding money from me? It's not demanding. It's asking. These people I owe, They're not reasonable. They don't care about my situation or my family. They just want their money. Then get a job. Get 2 jobs. Sell everything you own. But you won't be solving your problems with my money. Mrs. Thompson, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. You married my granddaughter because you thought I'd bail you out of your gambling debts. You manipulated her into humiliating me at her own wedding. You've been using money I gave her to make minimum payments to loan sharks. I understand everything. His facade cracked. You old witch! You have millions sitting in the bank while I'm about to get my legs broken. And you won't help family? You're not family. You're a parasite who attached himself to my granddaughter to get to my money. Chloe's my wife. That makes us family whether you like it or not. Actually, said a voice behind me, it doesn't anymore. I turned to see Chloe standing in the doorway, holding a manila envelope. Hi, Jeremy. I've been looking for you. Jeremy's face went white. Chloe? Baby, what are you doing here? I live here now, in an apartment I can actually afford. She handed him the envelope. Those are divorce papers. You can't be serious. Dead serious. I filed for legal separation yesterday and started divorce proceedings on grounds of abandonment and fraud. My lawyer says it'll take a few months to finalize, but the separation is immediate. Turns out lying to your wife about massive gambling debts counts as fraud in this state. Chloe, we can work this out. I'm getting help. I'm going to meetings. Jeremy, you left me alone with dangerous people calling our apartment while you ran away to hide. That's not a marriage, that's cowardice. But I love you. No, you love what you thought I could give you. Access to my grandmother's money. But guess what? Even if I wanted to help you, I can't. I don't have access to Grandma's money anymore. I have to work for a living now, just like everyone else. Jeremy looked between us, and I could see the moment he realized his meal ticket was gone. Permanently. This is your fault, he said, pointing at me. You turned her against me. No, Chloe said firmly. You did that all by yourself. Jeremy stood there for another moment, then suddenly lunged forward like he was going to push past me into the house. But Chloe was ready for him. I wouldn't do that if I were you, she said calmly. See that camera up there, and that one? And those nice police officers across the street who've been watching you since you pulled up? Jeremy spun around. Sure enough, there was a patrol car parked across the street with 2 officers inside. You called the cops on me? I called them when your lawyer threatened my grandmother this morning. Turns out they take elder intimidation very seriously. Jeremy's shoulders sagged. Chloe, please, I'll lose everything. You already did, she said. You lost it the day you decided to see us as dollar signs instead of people. As Jeremy walked away, I put my arm around Chloe. I'm proud of you. Thanks, Grandma. I'm starting to be proud of me too. But what Jeremy didn't know as he drove away was that this was only the beginning. The real test was just starting. 6 months later, I was in my kitchen making apple pie when Chloe knocked on my door. Not the guest room door, my front door. She'd moved into her own apartment 2 months ago, and Thursday evening dinners had become our tradition. Smells amazing in here, she said, giving me a hug. The usual recipe? Your great-grandmother's recipe. Same one I taught you when you were 12. The one I was convinced I could improve? That's the one. We sat at my kitchen table while the pie baked, and Chloe pulled out an envelope. I have something for you. Inside was a check for $2,700 made out to me. Chloe, you don't have to. Yes, I do. It's month 6 of my 20-year payment plan, remember? $2,700 a month until I pay back what I owe you. Sweetheart, I've been thinking about this debt situation. Her face fell. Are you changing the terms? Because I can do $3,000 a month if I pick up extra shifts? No. I'm thinking about forgiving it. Absolutely not. I blinked. Excuse me? Grandma, you can't forgive this debt. I need to pay it back. Not because you need the money, but because I need to know I can do it. But it's such a large amount, which is exactly why I need to pay it back. Do you know what I learned these past 6 months? I learned that I'm actually really good with money when I have to be. I can budget, I can save, I can make smart financial decisions. But I never knew that about myself because I never had to try. She pulled out her phone and showed me a budgeting app. Look, I'm tracking every expense. I found out I was spending $400 a month on coffee and takeout. $400. I could have bought a car with what I was spending on convenience. And now? Now I make coffee at home and pack lunch. I cook dinner instead of ordering delivery. I shop sales and use coupons and actually think about whether I need something before I buy it. How does it feel? Honestly, really hard at first. I had 3 mental breakdowns in the first month because I couldn't afford things I was used to buying without thinking. But also empowering. For the first time in my life, I know exactly where my money goes and why. And when I buy something I really want, like those boots I showed you last week, I appreciate it so much more because I know I worked for it and saved for it. I smiled at her. What happened to Jeremy? He declared bankruptcy and moved back in with his parents. Turns out bankruptcy court doesn't care about gambling debts to loan sharks. Those guys had to get in line with all his other creditors. Last I heard, he was working at a call center and going to Gamblers Anonymous meetings. Whether he's actually staying clean, I don't know. But it's not my problem anymore. What about the people he owed money to? Apparently they moved on to easier targets once they realized he was broke and had no family money coming. Loan sharks are businessmen. They don't waste time on people who can't pay. Any regrets about the divorce? Only that I didn't see through him sooner. But you know what? Even that experience taught me something important. What's that? That I'm stronger than I thought I was. When everything fell apart. I didn't fall apart with it. I figured out how to take care of myself. The timer went off, and I pulled the apple pie out of the oven. Golden brown, just like my mother used to make. Grandma, can I ask you something? Of course. Why didn't you cut me off sooner? You could have stopped supporting me years ago. I sat down across from her. Because I was scared. After your parents died, I was so terrified of losing you too that I said yes to everything. I thought if I could give you everything you wanted, you'd never want to leave. But that's not love, is it? That's fear disguised as love. No, it's not. Real love sometimes means saying no. It means letting people struggle so they can learn they're capable of handling struggle. I'm sorry it took me so long to figure that out, and I'm sorry it took me so long to teach it to you. We sat there eating warm apple pie and talking about her new job promotion, her plans to take a vacation she'd saved up for, and her idea to start a small investment account. Grandma, there's one more thing. What's that? I want to make you a new name tag. Oh? She pulled out a piece of cardstock and showed me what she'd written in beautiful calligraphy. Grandma Maggie, the woman who taught me how to stand on my own 2 feet. I love it, I said, my eyes filling with tears. Good, because that's who you really are, not the old wallet. You're the woman who loved me enough to let me fail, and then loved me enough to help me learn how to succeed. That night, after Chloe went home to her own apartment that she paid for with her own money, I called Patricia. I want to change my will back, I told her. You sure about that? I'm sure, but with some modifications. Chloe gets everything, but only after she's made all 20 years of payments on her debt to me. Even though you're not actually keeping the money? I smiled. Who says I'm not keeping it? I'm putting every payment into an investment account for her. By the time she finishes paying me back, there will be enough money in that account to buy her a house. Margaret Thompson, you sneaky woman. 20 years from now, when Chloe makes her final payment, I'm going to hand her the keys to a house that her own responsibility and hard work bought her. She just doesn't know it yet. And if she finds out? She won't, because Chloe doesn't see me as the old wallet anymore. She sees me as Grandma Maggie, and Grandma Maggie keeps her promises. I hung up the phone and looked at that name tag Chloe had made me. The woman who taught me how to stand on my own 2 feet. You know what? That was infinitely better than being anyone's financial safety net, even if I was still secretly planning to give her everything in the end, because that's what real love does. It teaches people they don't need you, and then it's there anyway when they've proven they don't need it anymore. This grandmother had learned a few new tricks after all. Thanks for listening. Don't forget to subscribe and feel free to share your story in the comments. Your voice matters.